Terrific. Good afternoon. My name is Nathan Stelter, president here at the Stelter Company, and I want to thank you for joining us for our webinar today, 10 Best Practices that will energize and transform your gift planning program with Kathryn Miree. I'll get back to introducing Kathryn in just a minute, but before I do that, I did want to say, as typical, a little bit about the webinar series. Many of you are familiar with the series we've been doing for quite a few years now. As an industry leader, Stelter is committed to providing innovative solutions and education for industry, and we're always happy to host these webinars complimentary, and we'll be announcing actually a whole slate of webinars in the coming weeks here. Today's webinar is actually our second of our 2021 series. If you missed last month's, we had not one but two sessions with Dr. Russell James. Both can be viewed on our website. But later this year, you're going to hear from some amazing presenters like Phil Purcell, Jackie Franey from the Nature Conservancy. I know Catherine Swank and Lawrence Heinze from Blackbaud are going to be joining us, as well as Jen Shang, who teaching us how to love our donors, and Adrian Sargent from the Institute for Sustainable Philanthropy in the UK. Those are just a couple of the names that we're going to be sharing and having them share their wisdom later this year. Our next one is actually going to be next month, April 28th, and Brantley Boyette, who's CEO of Giving Docs, will be discussing online estate planning and the upside for planned giving during the pandemic. You can register for his webinar currently on stelter.com/webinars, and be sure to keep an eye out for an email with an invitation to register and sign up for all those other webinars in the near future. Now back to today's webinar and our presenter. I am excited to introduce our speaker today. Many of you hopefully have heard Kathryn at some point or another. I know she did host a session for us last year that had amazing attendance and great insights. But Kathryn is the president of Kathryn Miree and Associates, a consulting firm that works with boards and staffs of nonprofits and foundations to build strong fundraising platforms and establish fundraising strategies, with a specialty really around major and planned gifts. Kathryn spent 15 years in various positions in the trust division of a large Southeastern bank before joining regional brokerage firm to establish its trust company and serve as its initial president and CEO. 1997 is when she established Kathryn Miree Associates to focus exclusively on charitable gift planning. Her clients include nonprofits from all charitable sectors across the United States and throughout Canada. Just back now a couple of years ago, Kathryn was inducted to the National Association of Charitable Gift Planners Hall of Fame and into the Estate Planning Hall of Fame just this last year in 2020. She's a frequent lecturer, co-author of the Family Foundation Handbook, and author of the Professional Advisor's Guide to Planned Giving. Received her undergraduate from Emory and her law degree from the University of Alabama School of Law. Good friend and one of my colleagues, and really the brainchild around national standards of gift planning success that we've created. And love to hand it over to Kathryn for the remainder of our time. Kathryn, it's all yours.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that, and look forward to Jen. I don't know what's happened, but there we go. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. I am delighted to be here with you. And what we're going to talk about today are 10 best practices that will really leverage what you're doing in your gift planning program, regardless of your size, your program maturity, your structure, your staff numbers, or the geographic dispersion of your donors. As Nathan mentioned, I've been working with CGP and to develop these national standards. So these 10 best practices really incorporate those standards, and you will hear a lot of them as we go through. If you've ever heard me talk about gift planning and gift planning programs, you know that I always start at the top with strategy. So many of the questions that I get from my clients are about a specific marketing tool, or how to use a professional advisor program, or what kind of an event to have. Those are tactics. Those are all important, but I like to start at the top with strategy, to think about what you're doing. And as we go through this, I want to ask you, where are you in your program? When was the last time that you assessed your program to really identify your strengths, your weaknesses, your successes, the things that weren't quite working. Every year, you should be looking at those things and developing a strategy for the following year. So just like your nonprofit has a strategy, you need a gift planning strategy. And it's going to be built on those core strengths and weaknesses in your program. This session should help you make that basic assessment of where you're strong, where you're weak, and what you need to focus on, where your real opportunities are. These standards, these best practices are going to be built on the national standards, which were published last year by CGP. And the purpose of those standards, we wanted a set of standards that applied to everybody, not just higher ed, not just healthcare, not just arts organizations, but all organizations. And we were able, there was a large group of us, a lot of years of experience in the field. I won't tell you how many, it's quite depressing. But we looked at it as an opportunity. And we put our heads together and really looked at what we see consistently in programs that are successful. And the national standards include a way to assess your program. They've got an assessment on their website, easy to use. I want to really encourage you to look at that. Help you identify the areas that you need to strengthen. They provide tools to get better results and allow you to make that plan, which is a path to more gifts. The standards are divided into 3 groups. 1, support from the top. That is, what does your management have to do to ensure that you are successful? You, as a gift planner, cannot do everything. You really need the support and buy-in of management. 2, a strong operating platform. So we're looking internally at what you have to have, what needs to be on your platform in order to be successful. And then the 3rd group is around donor-centric engagement. That is externally focused. So the first 2 groups are internally focused. The 3rd is externally focused. And we organize these in that way just so that it wouldn't be an overwhelming number of standards. You would be able to focus on groups. Here's my challenge today. As we walk through these best practices, take notes, think about your own program. And please take advantage of others that are on this call, the many other nonprofits in your community, the colleagues you have in the field. When you need better ideas and strategies, there's nothing like bouncing those off of somebody who's been there, done that, or is struggling with the same issues you are. So here are the 10 best practices, and I'm going to admit to being a little arbitrary. I'm using my lens of a consultant, having been inside several hundred charities. These are what I see that characterize the most successful programs. Number 1, and this focuses on that first group, your charity needs a long-term vision and strategy. That is, if you don't know where you're going as a charity, if you're not engaged in regular strategic planning, you're not going to be able to share that vision and excite that passion in donors. So that comes from the top. That comes from your leadership. So you need that powerful vision for the future that more than anything drives revocable and irrevocable deferred gifts. Second, you need resources and budgets. You need a budget that's going to allow you to be successful. Amazingly, a lot of the elements of a successful program require your time and work, which is certainly an investment, and not necessarily a lot of money, but there are elements that require money. Marketing is one of those and a central part of what you're going to be doing. And then campaigns, any campaign that you have, whether it is a comprehensive campaign, whether it is a standalone deferred gift campaign, which I've seen a number of, those ought to be aligned with your vision, your long-term vision. So here's how this might look in your organization. Here's a checklist of things that I expect to see if you're tracking on this long-term vision and strategy. I expect to see a current strategic plan, and I expect to see it in use, not one of these show items where it's on the shelf gathering dust, but you're actually using it and have some goals there that you are measuring on an ongoing basis. You have marketing that ties to those long-term visions. So it looks ahead. It's reminding your donors of those visions. You see a website that integrates not only the expectation of donors that they give now and that they invest in your future, but it also incorporates that vision across it in their program areas, in their giving areas, in any other areas that they have. If you have a campaign ongoing, I expect to see an echo of those long-term visions, and I expect to see a budget that has a section for gift planning that reflects your strategies. The second best practice, organizational leadership has to buy in. That means your executive team and your board. And when I say they buy in, they're talking about diversified revenue. It's not all about current revenue. They encourage collaborative fundraising. They are donor-centric rather than organization-centric. And here's what I would expect to see. I would expect to see an internal business case for gift planning. That is, why are you engaged in gift planning? What are your numbers? What are your opportunities? Where are you now? And what are your goals for where you would be? A one-pager. You can do this in one page, but I would expect to see it shared with the board and something that you review every year, update the numbers in, and the executive leadership buys in and shares it at their meeting. I would expect to see that you have access to the board, both in explaining opportunities in gift planning and talking to them about their role in gift planning success. So often I walk into your organizations and you're blocked from the board. You don't even have a voice, and there's not even any leadership on your board that represents gift planning. That's got to change if you're going to be successful, and that change comes from the top. And senior management is willing to go with you on calls. And as I said just in my last slide, I would expect to see an emphasis on diversified revenue and collaborative fundraising. That means it's every fundraiser's responsibility to open the door to gift planning. Best practice number 3. There are goals and metrics that foster success. And in my world, these metrics are going to be both activity metrics, that is, face-to-face meetings with donors, significant conversations with donors, face-to-face meetings with advisors that advance gifts, and significant conversations with advisors, and internal collaborations, measuring all those things, in addition to outcome metrics, which you probably measure now. Irrevocable gift counts and value. Revocable deferred gift counts and values. I also, on the outcome, would like to see the known to unknown ratio. That is, of the gifts that come across the transom, the matured estate gifts. How many of those were members of your legacy society and you knew about? How many of those were surprises that you did not know about? I want to see your legacy society stick rate. That is, of your legacy society members who died, how many of them left you a gift? When I've done audits of organizations, I've seen numbers there that were as low as 35%. Wow, think about that. 65% of your gifts vaporized. And I've seen it as high as 95%. That's what you want to aim for. So you need a strategy around that if your numbers are low. And your matured gift revenue by type, so that you can look at trends. All of those are important. That means you've got to track, you've got to have discrete fields in your system to track these conversations and meetings and collaborations. That's not as hard as it sounds to do, but you've got to have a partnership with your data team to be able to do that so that you can generate these reports. You've got to have training to get everybody in the habit of recording these conversations, and you need a dashboard. You need a dashboard not only for yourself to track your goals and your progress, but you need that dashboard to go to the board. It's the tool they need to see over and over again. And I'm going to share, I have a dashboard. Oh, I haven't included it. We may find it in one of these slides, but in the report slide, I probably have it there. So we'll look at that when I get to it. Number 4, data is prioritized. Data is your divining rod. It is the only way that you have to identify opportunities, to identify trends, to track your success. I cannot emphasize that enough. So often I walk in and I see that you have great information on giving, and that's good. That's wonderful. We need that. We start with that. But also what you need to track are in points of engagement. So have they served on the board, whether it's the governing board or the advisory board? Do they come to your events on a regular basis? Have they chaired your events? Are they volunteers, hands-on? Are they members of your auxiliary? Are they other types of volunteers? What else would we see? Have they participated in campaign? Are they grateful patients if you're a hospital? Are they alumni if you're higher ed? Are they grandparents of students at your school? What are the points of engagement? You need to track all of those. And there are no magic wands for this. And if you hadn't been doing it, today's the day to start to do that. But it will help you identify prospects for planned giving and analyze the success of your marketing strategies and analyze the success of your collaborative strategies or any other strategies that you see in place. Here's what I expect to see if you're doing a good job here. I expect to see discipline in recording data. That is hard to achieve. It's a cultural thing. So you need to get in that habit. And it's not just these things, these points of engagement, it's other information that you pick up. Do they have children or not? What is their marital status? Have they ever been married? Are they widowed? Are they divorced? All these are factors. I expect to see access to data, and that means you can put it in, but you can also request reports or do those yourself. You need to be able to access it. You can have millions of points of great data, and if you cannot access it, it doesn't do you any good at all. You need to be able to use the data to make decisions. That is, others have to have trust in this data that you're collecting and using. Use your dashboard as an educational tool and a place to start, but just remember the power of the data, excuse me, in communicating what you're doing and what the critical elements are. You need to be able to share that. Here is my dashboard. Now, this isn't a very attractive dashboard. Granted, it's pretty straightforward, but I want you to pay attention to how it's organized. One, it's one page. Two, I divided it into 4 groups. One is what I call deferred gift production. That's the count and the market value of the number of new gifts that you have closed. I've included non-cash gifts on there as well. You may also want to have a line for IRA gifts, because so often as gift planners, we're the ones coaching that element of giving. Then we have a contact report. Those are the activity metrics I mentioned. The key stats, those are some of the outcome metrics that I have mentioned. And the opportunity stats, that's where I'm looking at the number of multi-year donors that you have, the number of tier 1 prospects, those are prospects that are ready for a conversation, the number of tier 2 prospects that you have. Those are the ones that are the primary targets for our marketing. They are almost as engaged as tier 1. They are moving towards tier 1. They are certainly passionate about what you do. And we just need to pull them closer. You might also include in these the percentage of your board members who have made a planned gift. I like that number. This is going to the board, and you want them to be focused on the fact that we're paying attention, and they have a role in that. And before I go to number 5 and finish, I want to just stop briefly to see if there are any questions, and I'm going to rely on Jen and Nathan, and if not, we'll move on.
We do have a couple, Kathryn. How do you solve the cash is king mentality, where the cash and direct mail fundraising budgets are 80 to 100 times the gift planning budget?
This is a common issue that I see. I see it a lot. And here's what I would tell you. Number 1, this year has been quite an awakening, 2020 and the first part of this year. And in many of my clients' shops, what I'm hearing is that the matured gift revenue from planned gifts saved the day. Events were cut. They couldn't do events because of COVID. And a lot of the direct face-to-face solicitation of major and principal gifts did not happen. And so this is where your internal business case comes from. I want you to go back and look at the last 10 years of actual revenue from matured gifts. Look at it as a percentage of your revenue. Look at the potential to augment your revenue, but there's never been a better time to talk about diversification of revenue. It is clear on everyone's minds. Any other questions?
Yes, we have a couple more. We'll go through.
Okay, let's do one more.
Okay, this is a quick one. Kate is asking if your dashboard that you showed, is it a static dashboard or is that populated dynamically?
It is populated dynamically, so it is constantly changing. In some cases, refreshing it at the end of every quarter and sending a report to management quarterly. In some cases, it's refreshed on an annual basis, and it really just depends on your system. On some systems, if you can work with your data team, it can be created so it's changing daily and as actively as data is coming in. In other cases, it's a requested report, but it's definitely something that is updated, and you can add a second page that looks at trends. But what I'm doing with this dashboard is really getting management and the board to focus on the critical path elements that signal success in your program and help them understand that it's not just about the dead people. It's not just about the cash flow. It's about building that pipeline. It's about getting some of those known to unknown stats higher. It's getting your stick rate or retention rate of your legacy society members higher. It's a teaching tool as well as a reporting tool. All
Okay.
right, I'm going to move on and we'll have time for more questions at the end. I'll try to save a few minutes. So best practice number 5. I would like to see an active prospect management process. You need an active prospect management process if you're going to be successful in your program. I don't care what your portfolio structure looks like or how they're assembled. Whatever way they're assembled, they need to be managed. That means you need to be moving through qualifying a donor, cultivating a donor, soliciting a donor, stewarding a donor, and then moving right back into cultivation, solicitation, stewardship. It's a circle, it's a cycle, but it starts with qualifying a donor to be in the portfolio. And the portfolios need to be right sized. That means they need to be manageable. If you have a portfolio of 300 gift planning prospects, good luck with that. I think you need something to take the edge off. A little Valium, a little wine, I don't know, but 300 is not a manageable portfolio. You cannot possibly get to all of those in a meaningful way. So here's what I would expect to see. I would expect to see donors that are classified. That is, I mentioned tier 1s, tier 2s earlier. I'd like to see those tags on your donor base. You need to do a deeper view. Let's look at the multi-year givers. Let's look at the points of contact. I'm going to make it sound simpler than it is, but I work with teams all the time to do this. And you all have access to those national rankings so that you can score your donors. I do it very simply. Tier 1, tier 2, and that means the tier 1s we want to get in front of in the coming year. We need face-to-face. We want to engage them. They're ready for the conversation. They're ready to be solicited. Tier 2s, we really want to focus our marketing on those. We're going to include tier 1s. We're going to include some tier 3s as well, which are the other donors in your donor base. But your best prospects are sitting inside your organization, and that's where you need to focus. I expect to see the gift planner serving as an active coach. That is, not all these tier 1s are going to be in the gift planner's portfolio. They can't possibly manage them, right? They're going to be in portfolios across the organization. So if your major gift team and principal gift team have tier 1s, then that gift planner ought to be coaching and sitting down with them every month, every other month to say, let me help you with a strategy. Let's integrate this ask when you make your major gift ask. Let's look for opportunities, maybe for a blended gift. Maybe after you've closed the major gift, it's also ask them to extend their impact to the future. It's great stewardship of your donors. It's an easy ask. They need to be trained on how to ask, but you can do that coaching. You can do that training. Very important. Your portfolio ought to be dynamic and changing on a regular basis. Number 6, you need qualified staff in place to do the work. This sounds like a no-brainer, but I've seen a lot of models where there was not qualified staff to do the work, and they are frustrated, and the rest of the team is frustrated. It's pretty simple to do. I want you to look at your job description. You know, in looking at shops, I would say there are at least 5 or 6 different models for gift planning staff and how they work. Sometimes I see standalone. Sometimes I see major gift officers that are doing both roles. Sometimes that see just someone who's a resource for the rest of the staff. They're doing training and they answer questions and they're the expert that you go to. There are many models. And that's a session for another day. But whatever it is, your job description needs to be real clear about what the role of the gift planner is. You ought to be looking at that job description and updating it on a regular basis. When I'm helping charities find good gift planners, I believe that relationship building expertise is far more important than technical expertise. I want them to be comfortable. I want them to have some level of technical expertise, but you can teach the technical. It's much harder to teach the relational if you have somebody that is not comfortable or does not have a true interest in donors. Sometimes the gift planner's role is that coaching role. That is the most important thing. So they've got to be good at that part of it. Sometimes it's direct with donors role, and they are the only one talking to donors. Sometimes you have one person that is doing all of the fundraising. That's a different role altogether. They just need basic conversational skills, comfort in opening the door, and experts on call if they need help with the more difficult gift. And in every shop, there needs to be an emphasis on ongoing education. So here's what I would expect to see. Here's my checklist. Good job descriptions that accurately describe the role, updated regularly. Education is encouraged, and there is a budget. And this is both local education and the Gift Planning Council. It's opportunity for national educational opportunities, and it's time to attend sessions just like this one. And networking with other charities is encouraged, because you are all these principles. That's the beauty of these principles. I don't care who you are, what shop you're in, these apply to all of you. Number 7, we talked earlier about an internal case for gift planning. That was the business case. This is the external case. What is your case for donor long-term investment in your mission? I want to be able to see it. It ought to reflect the same vision of the short-term giving case for giving, but it ought to extend the vision to the future. It ought to be urgent. It ought to be compelling. It ought to drive your donors toward that vision and show them their role in achieving that. One of the best examples I saw, it was related to endowment, but it's from years and years ago, the 1920s, Stanford University. And the present president was talking to a large group of donors that were going into campaign. There was going to be a huge endowment component. And he said this. He said, this university has come as far as it can come based on the Stanford family fortune. We have got a vision for this university that will position it as one of the most powerful institutional organizations, the most effective institutional educational organizations in this country. But that vision is not possible without your support. And I'm talking about our alumni, our staff, the community, everyone who was impacted by this university. You will make it possible. So it was urgent, it was compelling. You saw the vision, and it picked everyone in that room up by the collar and said, I'm talking to you. Every one of you has a role in the success of our mission. And this is how it translates. I would expect to see your case for investment, your case for donors be a both and. We need your dollars now. And because you have so much impact, because you have impacted so many lives, please consider extending that impact to the future. You will impact generations. It incorporates the donor in the solution, as I just gave you in that example, and it is integrated across your website, throughout your campaign brochure, in your annual report, if you still have an annual report, it's everywhere so that donors understand it's in your program materials, which say this would not be possible without the investment of our donors. They make these services possible. So think about that. Look at your materials, look at your marketing materials and see how good a job you do with that. Best practice number 8, stewardship is part of your culture. It is a priority. Care of your donors is not just cut in those years that things are tight because it looks like a non-revenue activity. It is at the core of your revenue. It will leverage your revenue more than anything else. It impacts donor retention. And if you don't believe me, just measure stewardship and the result on your donors. And also look at the average gift of your long-term donors, the average gift size, and those of a brand new donor, and compare the cost of acquiring a new donor. Once you have a donor in the door, they are gold. You need to keep them. And stewardship is what allows you to do it. In my stewardship, I like to position donors as partners in your mission, because that's what they are. They are investors and partners in mission. So here's how I see this. You put a premium on knowing your donor. When you meet with a donor, you're focused on the donor. You are very donor centric. You show them the impact of their gifts on a regular basis. You thank them on a regular basis without putting a giving solicitation in that thank you. Just send them one letter a year that says, look at the things that have happened as a result of your giving. And you don't have to tie that to a specific donor. You can look at the larger body of giving and the things that have happened in your organization that would not have happened without their investment. Tell them, let them know that the work that you do is not possible without them. That is critical. Number 9, your marketing positions donors as partners in mission. And it really reflects who they are. You segment your marketing to the extent that you can, so that if you're sending letters to your volunteers, you acknowledge the impact that they have had on your organization and its success. If you are sending letters to long-term donors, you acknowledge that special status that they have with you. But echo those messages I just talked about in best practice number 8, and make it clear that you're telegraphing that. You need a strategy for your marketing so that you know who you're trying to reach, what you expect to happen, and then you're going to measure that. So here's what I expect. I want to look at your language. I'm going to look at all your language. I'm going to ask for every piece of printed material and see how well that language is integrated, because I look at every time you touch a donor, you're marketing. You are communicating with them, and that is a form of marketing. It's not just the tools that Stelter gives you. Those are important, but it's every touch you have with them. So look at those, audit those, see how effectively you're getting your messages across. And what you would think, test them with some of your best donors. But look at consistency of message, look at consistency of design, look at depth and how you're positioning them. I think sometimes when I see organizations that are all about current giving, and that's all their messaging, and it's all about urgency and today, I wonder if they realize that every donor comes through your organization. So every time they use one of your services, every time you send them direct mail, every time you meet with them, these are your gift planning donors. These are all prospects, and the way you touch them in other places in the organization and the way that you message with them, to them in other places in the organization affects their thinking about whether you need those long-term gifts, about how much you value those long-term gifts, about how those long-term gifts really leverage what you're doing now. So make that audit of all your written materials and digital materials and marketing materials to see how you're communicating with your donors and what you're talking about. And finally, best practice number 10, the organization is donor-centric. And when I say donor-centric, I mean truly donor-centric. You're not looking at your donors like little ATMs. You're looking at them as essential partners in missions, and you care about what they want to give to rather than what the nonprofit wants them to give to. I often tell this story. I was working with the dean of a law school, and I was coaching him. I was just trying to get him more focused. Lawyers, they're tough. I would say of all the donors out there, doctors are pretty tough. Lawyers are pretty tough. They're extremely intelligent. They want something specifically suited to them. So I was coaching him on how to have the gift planning conversation. And every time we would meet, the first thing he would do is put a proposal in front of me for scholarships at the law school. I was a donor, and so he knew I was interested in the law school, but every time I saw that scholarship proposal, I pushed it back. And you know why? I pushed it back because that was their priority. That was the dean's priority. It was not my priority. After I'd pushed back, after about 3 meetings, about 3 of those proposals, I finally just said, Dean, why do you think I give to the law school? And he looked at me, he looked a little surprised. He said, because we're great. We're going up in the public law school rankings every year. We have some of the best faculty that can be recruited. We've got these innovative programs. That's why you give. And I said, no, that's not. And there was a long silence. And finally he said, why do you give? And I thought, we're making progress. We're finally getting somewhere. And I explained to him that the reason I gave to the law school was because of the culture of the faculty. It was because they were invested in my success when I was a student. And I've been talking to the students that are enrolled now. That culture is still there. I don't know if y'all remember Paper Chase, where they were trying to root everybody out and fail everybody. This was the opposite. They were invested in our success. And that is donor-centric. When you're asking me why I give, and I'm allowed to talk to you, tell you my story, rather than just being asked to give to what is most important to you on that day. That's donor-centric. And that is the way that you really build strong relationships. That's the way you unfold donors and really understand more about why they're there. So here's what I see. Fundraisers want to know more about why the nonprofit's work is so important to the donor, and they're asking that question. You have gift acceptance policies that allow donors to give more than cash. Cash is only about 2 or 3% of a donor's portfolio. So if you want to talk to them about what's best for them, you're going to talk to them about long-term appreciated assets, maybe using their IRA. If they're over 70 and a half, it will be focused on the donor. And I see good stewardship. So those are the 10 best practices. How are you going to use those? I would tell you that the first thing to do, assess your program. Once you assess your program and identify the strengths and the weaknesses, then make a plan, identify the opportunities, build on strengths and address weaknesses, set clear goals, then evaluate. Every year you need to track results, use the data to look at patterns, use the self-assessment tools. If you go to the CGP website, you will find those. And if you look at this presentation in the speaker's notes, I've got that addressed. They not only have the 16 national standards, but they have self-assessment tools for each of those 3 groups. And then finally, after you assess and you evaluate, make a plan for the coming year. make a strategy, and use that to be successful. It's as simple as that. If you will think about these standards, these best practices in terms of your own program, that's where you start. Everybody has different program maturities, and you simply need to start somewhere. So those are my best practices. Those are the ones I recommend to you. I think you will find if you use those, they will leverage what you're doing. They will focus what you're doing and accelerate your success. So now I'd like to take the final few minutes and just answer some questions. I know we have one left over from the midway, but I'll open it to Nathan and Jen, and let's see what people are asking. And I hope you'll ask.
We have quite a few, so we'll try to get through as many as we can.
Okay.
We have a handful of people. Right now I'm seeing Jill, Susan, Brenda, and they're all wanting to know if you have resources for sample case statements.
Yes, I do. And I will be happy to share those. I will be happy to share a sample business case, that internal case. Is that what you're looking for? Or are you looking for the donor case for support?
I think the business case,
Okay.
benchmarking samples, yes, and the case statements,
I have
both internal and external.
Okay, I have a sample business case, the internal case for support. Not as many, and maybe I'm not sure how well, other than the example I gave you that I have deferred cases for support. I may have a few. Here's what I'll do. I'll share the resources that I have, and maybe we can append them to the slides that you make available. So just give me a little bit of time, and I'll share a couple of things that I think may be helpful to you.
Wonderful, thank you. We have a question from Rachel. She says, my organization is dramatically changing its strategic plan right now. A lot is changing in terms of what we will do in the future. Is it possible to strategically grow a planned giving program without a strong future case for support?
Very hard. If you don't know where your organization is going, people give to outcomes. That's what we've learned from survey after survey after survey of donors. So in my experience, the conversation about a planned gift is not about a bequest or a charitable remainder trust or a beneficiary designation. It starts with what the donor's vision is, what the donor hopes to accomplish, and that's going to be built within the parameters of your vision. If I don't have a vision to talk about, if our organization doesn't know what his future looks like, it's really hard to ask donors to invest in that future. You're basically saying, trust us, we'll figure it out after a while. So that's my answer.
Nathan, did you have anything you wanted to ask?
Yeah, and actually I'll echo really quickly what Kathryn just said. I think especially as donors are looking more and more at their philanthropy as an investment, and not having a strong case statement or strategic plan. You think about when you invest in anything, you want to know where that thing is going. You want to know where and I agree wholeheartedly with you on that. It does make it amazingly hard if you don't have that, and you're not transparent and clear with that with your constituents too. There's a ton of questions in here around portfolios and prospect portfolios. What number constitute a right-sized portfolio, or what is the right size assignments for staff? Actually, there's one question here from Bruce. What if upper management insists on 600 plus prospect portfolios? Does focus on the top 120 strategy work? So,
okay, so let me start with the 600 because I just find that mind-boggling. One of the values of tracking activities and metrics is that you will be able to show your management how many visits it takes to close a planned gift. You probably know that about major gifts and principal gifts, about the number of visits it takes to close a major gift. Well, anytime, what I see in a lot of organizations is they apply the same metrics to gift planning officers that they do to major giving officers, and it's not the same. So educate, educate, educate. What's the goal of the plan of the portfolio? Are we trying to close more gifts? They're not going to close by marketing alone. That is a donor engagement issue. And the more engaged with your donor, the more secure your donor. You might also want to educate management with some of Russell James's stats, which show that when a donor puts a planned gift in place, their annual giving increases. I found when I see these real cattywampus type portfolios, it is simply an educational issue. And also a lack of understanding that these gift planning prospects are in everybody's portfolio, including annual giving portfolios. So you've got to educate. And when I say actively management, there is no standard number because it depends on the role. Are you a standalone gift planning officer? In that case, maybe you have 100, 125 prospects in your portfolio. If you are spending half your time coaching, half your time managing your own prospects, then I'm going to decrease that to 60 to 70 prospects in your portfolio. So it just depends on what that role is. If you are somebody running all the programs, then, and there are some of you in the audience that are standalone fundraisers, you're doing it all. Well, your tier ones are even more important to you. You've got to be focused on the people most likely to positively respond. So sorry not to be able to give you an exact number, but there is no exact number. And I would really do battle with anybody who thought that there was.
And I would say, to your point earlier, the 600 plus is not an exact number. That is definitely one that, again, it's mind-boggling sometimes how some
I've seen 300,
Oh.
and I start laughing because I think, I don't even know the names of all these people. You can't know the names. If they called, you wouldn't have any idea who they are.
Yep. Well, and there's another question here around the tier 1, tier 2, actually, about the process. How do you draw a line? How do you define that, I guess?
Here's the way I do it. I am going in and I'll pull I do it the old fashioned way. I don't have any big servers here in my house that I can crunch a lot of data, but I can do this. I can pull a report of the donors that have been giving 10 out of the last 12 years, or if you have a deep donor base, maybe 12 out of the last 15. I'm going to pull the board members and past board members, advisory board members, people who have chaired, let's say, an event for you. I'll take the top markers for points of engagement, get those lists, and then combine them. What I'm looking for, if there are 8 points of engagement, 8 different reports I pulled on that, and they may include alumni, grateful patient, marital status. Those may also be in my check marks. I'm going to get the ones with the most check marks across the top. So I just did one the other day. There were about 3,500 in the pool, and I had about 8 markers. And at the top, I had a number with 6, and then 5, and then 4, and things like that. I would say around that 500, which we sort of started, 3,500 that we started with, because they had high planned giving scores or were in a portfolio being managed. I then reduced that. I'm looking for about, in this case, I was looking for about the top 5 to 7%, the highest scores. Those were my tier 1s. The others that had scores down to maybe 2 or 3, next 10%, 15%, those might be my tier 2s, because I was looking to focus on an active management program. So the tier 2s, I'm just going to arbitrarily draw a line at the top around the number that I can get to in 1 year, whether it is me alone or me and the major gift officers. Then I'm going to take the next very active, very engaged group, and that's going to be my tier 2. Then everybody else might be my tier 3 up to a point. That's not very exact, but that should give you an idea of how you can approach it.
Wonderful. I'm going to go ahead and jump in. We are a little bit over our time, so I want to be respectful of people and let you know we had about 28 questions that did not get answered. So if you did have additional questions you sent in, you would really like to talk to Kathryn about, you can reach out to her. Her email address is on the screen, kwmiree@me.com. If you have any other questions about our webinar series or Stelter's products and services, you can reach out to myself and Nathan. Our emails are also there, and you can also visit us at our website at stelter.com. Finally, we did record the presentation today, and we will offer the recording as well as the handouts on our website at stelter.com/webinars. I will try to have it up by Friday. I will be sending an email out to everyone when it's ready. So you can just wait for my email and then you can go get them, or you can head out there after Friday and they should be there. So thank you so much, everyone. I think we had about 400, a little over 400 people here with us today, joining us for the last hour. Thank you, Kathryn. We really appreciate your expertise and your time and talent in sharing this with the industry today. Nathan, nice to see you. And everyone, make sure you head to our website and register for our April 28th webinar with about oh, I can't remember his name. Brantley from Giving Docs. Yes. So go ahead and head there and register for that. So thanks everyone for joining us today, and we hope to see you next month. Have a great afternoon.